Support Narativ's independent journalism at patreon.com/narrative and check out our podcast wherever you get your podcasts. And don't forget to subscribe and download. Everybody, welcome to Narrative Live. We will be live with the panel in just a few minutes, but with all the stuff going on with the U.S. Postal Service and Louis DeJoy, I thought it'd be great to get Glenn Kirshner, the federal prosecutor, former federal prosecutor, on the line with us to talk to us a little bit about the crimes that Mr. DeJoy may have already committed. Hi, Glenn. How are you?
Hey, Zev. How are you? Good to be with you again.
Thanks very much for joining me at this quick turnaround. So you posted something interesting the other day about DeJoy needs to be in jail. Tell me a little bit about why you think he's already committed some crimes.
Yeah, so it looks like, based on the reporting, he was pressuring his employees to donate to Republican candidates of his choosing. He was also pressuring them to attend high-dollar fundraisers for Republican candidates at his 15,000 square foot gated mansion. I do wonder how many of the postal employees he supervises live in a 15,000 foot gated mansion. I even wonder if his mail carrier is permitted inside his gates to deliver his mail.
He has golden. He has a golden staircase, by the way, 18 karat gold staircase.
Why wouldn't we?
Why wouldn't we? He's just a public servant, of course.
Yeah. So he was pressuring his employees to donate, and frankly, the director of his human resources department, back when he was running New Breed Logistics, a North Carolina-based company, which he was the CEO for more than 30 years. Right. His HR director went on record, and I can almost quote it verbatim. He said, "Louis DeJoy asked us for money. We gave him money, and he then gave us big bonuses to reimburse us." That would be, in a dozen words, campaign finance fraud. Right. It violates both the federal law and, more importantly for our purposes, the North Carolina state law. And Josh Stein, the Attorney General for the state of North Carolina, has already weighed in, of course, via tweet, because that's how all public servants communicate these days. And he said, look, this is the kind of thing that needs to be investigated because it may very well have violated North Carolina state law. It would be a felony, and there is no statute of limitations. That's the money line.
So
right
there could be something going on there from the state level. Now, Elizabeth Warren and a couple of her colleagues just put out a report saying that they have done a study of medical delays, prescription delays for people who need their medicines, and they're just not getting to it. It looks like the delays started off in the early part of 2020 as being about 18 to 32% delayed. That is, instead of 2 to 3 days, it was 3 to 4 days. Now they're starting to be 5 to 7 days. So a 50% delay. Plus, a lot of the people who are fulfilling the prescriptions, a lot of these companies say they need to resend or reship a lot of these out because some of them are getting lost.
Yeah.
Is there a way to say, Mr. DeJoy, you're standing in the way of people's health care, and is there a way to get him through that? Is there a criminal statute we could apply to that?
There is a criminal statute that applies to somebody who is entrusted with the delivery of the mail and he wrongfully delays the mail. Again, that perfectly describes what Louis DeJoy has set about doing from the moment he became Postmaster General. We saw the internal documents, the talking points memos that were generated after he took over as the Postmaster General. And it said, listen, the trucks will leave the docks on time. I understand you will be frustrated because we're going to have to leave mail on the mailroom floor. We're going to have to leave mail undelivered on the docks, but the trucks will run on time. It's good that he's got the trains and the trucks running on time. And the problem is,
there seems to be delays everywhere.
And Louis DeJoy, logistics expert as he builds himself, you know what the remedy is? He said, all we'll do is we'll take the mail the next day that we had to leave on the mailroom floor or on the docks, and we'll deliver it the following day. It's like, yes, and then twice as much will be piled up, Mr. Logistics expert. So listen, this is by design. This is slowing the mail. This is doing Trump's nefarious bidding and Mnuchin's nefarious bidding. He had a hand in picking Louis DeJoy for this particular dirty task. And they're trying to inject more chaos and confusion into, the ballots by mail.
There might be delays on both sides. 5 to 7 days to get a ballot to a voter, and then 5 to 7 days to get the ballot back. And you really might miss a lot of people who need to be voting. And if it's his former XPO company that's shipping all these things around, it's his company that does a lot of the contracting, his former company that does all the contracting to the USPS, he could really cause trouble for the delivery of specific ballots or specific boxes to specific districts that are really tight.
Yeah, and let's not forget that given some of the financial interest he has in agencies that compete with the post office, if the U.S. Postal Service fails, Louis DeJoy benefits financially. How do you like that for a public servant?
Well, from what I've read about his private company, the former company, the XPO, it's like a mobbed up operation. It basically is designed to fail. It doesn't even have the credit backing that it needs. It's sort of designed to grow until it collapses. And that was an analyst that put out a report in 2018 about the company. And it also talks about a group of directors there and executives that are basically felons. There's 5 felons in the higher executive ranks of this company, which indicates a little bit of who Louis DeJoy hangs out with. There's an old saying about that.
I don't know what kind of qualifications they're looking for on the resume. I mean, is it do they look for felony convictions or misdemeanors? Okay, I don't know.
Yeah, probably not. But is there anything that the consumer can do? Can we sue the USPS to say this guy is damaging our service that we're allowed to get in terms of the Constitution? Is there a class action lawsuit or something like that to say Louis DeJoy's got to go?
Yeah, first of all, I'm not a civil law expert, and I've never filed a class action lawsuit in my life, so I wouldn't pretend to be an expert on this. I've talked to some of my friends who are civil litigators, and they say they think it would be an uphill battle. I think it's an academic question, quite frankly, because even if you could get a judge to certify plaintiffs as a class, it may be that the officials could plead that they were acting within their official duties, and so it's an uphill battle. But I say it's academic because this thing, it would never come to fruition before the election or before we had an opportunity to actually have an impact on DeJoy's shenanigans before November.
Well, there you go. What an interesting interview. I love Glenn. He's always full of terrific insight. Hey, Eric Garland and Greg Oliar. How are you guys doing? Oh, can I hear you?
Hey.
There you are. Good. We've been left alone. There's no female presence with us today.
Our job tonight is to mansplain to our audience, I think. Yeah. Sorry, guys.
What are we mansplaining? Mansplaining the elections to everybody.
We still got Greg here?
Yeah. Can you hear me, Eric? Oh, did we lose Eric? Hello, Eric. Hello, Eric. No, Eric?
You've been breaking up a little bit.
Okay. Am I breaking up for you too, Greg?
No, but I think
I'm here. I'm talking. Hello.
Okay.
I think DeJoy is messing with the broadband now too.
It's the second time in a row I've noticed the every time we do something about this guy, he calls in his connections. He must have connections in the bandwidth world, and they pop us off. Now, he's an interesting guy. I mean, just a little graphic just to explain what our good friend Glenn Kirshner was saying there. And let me throw this up here if I can. This is Louis' rap sheet, if you'd like, if you could just call it a rap sheet. Unfortunately, he's got more than that. And Eric will go here, and we'll put this here.
Soon enough.
And we'll put this here just to fill in a blank space. But so Louis DeJoy got to go because he's apparently committed campaign finance fraud. He's delaying crucial medications to people by as much as 50%. This is really interesting today because the Warren investigation, Warren and her colleagues in the Senate did a real investigation to figure out exactly how much of a delay there was on medication. And I'm glad they chose medication because it doesn't look political. But of course, if it's happening to medication, it potentially is happening to all other mail. And they found some interesting things. I mean, it was actually quite a very strongly worded statement. She said, "We know Louis DeJoy is sabotaging the Postal Service, and our investigation reveals his scheming has slowed the delivery of mail-order prescription drugs, threatening health risks for millions of Americans during a pandemic. He needs to resign, and if he won't, the Board of Governors must remove him." And then they did this chart, which I threw up there earlier on, but let me see if I can.
So let's look.
Go ahead, Eric. You there?
Well, I'm just thinking, let's look at the language that Senator Warren has chosen there.
Okay, I'll put it back up.
Sabotage indicates mens rea. I got it memorized. You've got three terms there: sabotage, scheme, and all health pandemic. That'll do it. But the first two are the big ones. Sabotage means an intentional act of destruction with the hope of harming assets or stopping some activity. If you're talking about prosecution, say criminal, you're looking at mens rea and actus reus. Mens rea would be, do you have knowledge of what you're doing is supposed to be harmful? Actus reus, do you take an action subsequent to that? And sabotage, in one French word, which means throw the wooden sandal in the thing so it goes boom. That indicates both mens rea and actus reus. If you're, it's not, I made an oopsie, I dropped my shoe. That's, I knew I was going to hurt this thing and I intentionally caused damage.
So she's making a really serious claim
that out there.
Yeah. Wow. I didn't
get
that from that, but that's why you're here.
Oh yeah. Well, and scheme is in all kinds of prosecutions for conspiracies. That if you got multiple people that have a tricky little plan for them to get what they want, that is illegal. You'll see the phrase in furtherance of the scheme. If you have a scheme for a federal prosecutor, that means particularly when you have co-conspirators, you had a plan that you executed with multiple people, which this is, to do something that is breaks federal felonies. And when you talk about threatening health risks for millions of Americans during a pandemic, think of the number of medications that are that will cause great distress if they miss. If a patient misses suddenly a bunch of doses in a row. Let's say you have a lot of PTSD patients who are veterans who primarily get their, if not entirely, get their prescriptions through the mail. Let's say you're on an anxiolytic, Klonopin, Xanax, Ativan, something like that, to reduce stress on a regular basis. Which would be one of the methodologies. If you are a daily user of that substance and suddenly you cut that off, you could go into seizures.
It's really dangerous, right? It's really dangerous, and even suicide.
It's extremely dangerous.
It's a risk of that. If cutting off your medication like that without proper plan.
That might be a risk with antipsychotics or mood stabilizers. Generally, antidepressants might take a few more days to taper off in terms of blood serum levels. But there's a number of those classes of drugs that if you suddenly cut off, just those alone, leave it there, you're talking about something bad could happen where you have a neurological problem, like a seizure, that would be very acute, or you could decompensate psychologically and possibly end up suicidal or in dangerous behavior. That's just that. There's probably 100 other examples.
It's a really serious thing that they're doing. It's really
intentionally causing health distress in a scheme with other active co-conspirators against federal and state statutes of multiple sorts, and the son of a bitch has a financial incentive unique to himself, where the more damage he causes, the more money he makes. Because his wife still has $30 million in stock in XPO.
$75 million that she has, which of course is their shared stock, but she's holding it for obvious reasons. But it's a significant amount of money. And
that's a lot. So that's certainly enough for an incentive. I'm just thinking not of the moral conviction, because we've already done that. This man's a scumbag of historic proportion. But we're talking about, you see the bloodlust on Mr. Justice Glenn Kirshner there, who's just like, he can just sense like, yep, this is just like felony bait. Mm-hmm. This is indictment catnip. Yes. So
I also want to pay attention. Get you to pay attention to this one figure here, this 35% of reshipments. This is what the providers of medicine, whoever they might be, are saying that they have to reissue shipments of medication, which means that if they're reissuing 35% of all the medication that's being sent out by them, where is that 35% going? And also, what does that mean for our ballots? If 35% of our ballots start disappearing as well because of these delays that are causing these mystery disappearances. It's an interesting stat. I don't want to read too much into it because it is just about medication. But
I'm going to read tons of. Oh no, let's read tons into this. When you're talking about a massive, coast to coast plus American territories, Alaska, Hawaii, everywhere, military bases. When you're talking about the fine-tuned machine of the U.S. Postal Service, which guaranteed by the Constitution to exist as part of our national infrastructure, and run by fantastic professionals for over 200 years, and incredibly successful to a very reliable degree, almost in the Six Sigma if you're in manufacturing. 0.00001% of errors, and
it's very well controlled.
It's well controlled
machine, without a doubt.
Going up to 49% delay inside of 8 weeks is somebody is going. Monkeys have sledgehammers.
Right.
That is not a minor, standard, deviation away from the mean here. That is, they're lobbing grenades everywhere because they're all going to go to prison forever, and they don't want to find out what the term prison wallet means if they Google it. So,
I mean, that is a huge delay, and you compound that. You go to 5 to 7 days for a ballot on one side and the other side. You get the ballots 5 to 7 days later, and then you're sending it out. It's going to arrive 5 to 7 days late. You compound that with everything else that's going to be delayed, and how much mail is going to be on the post office floors. That his stuff's not getting delivered. It's not going to go out. They're going to snowball into a real crisis by November 3rd if they're already experiencing these kinds of delays.
So they're going to cause foreclosures. They're going to cause checks not to show up. They're going to cause businesses not to be paid. They're going to. These are saboteurs. These were traitors who were trying to overthrow democracy. They got caught badly. It's not going well either. It's getting worse every day, and it's going to get to catastrophic levels of awful for these scumbags. And so now they're just trying to kill as many people as they possibly can and destroy what's left of our institutions. So, and we're watching them while they do it.
We have to look at who this guy is, too. I mean, anybody that gets put into this sort of position this late in the Trump administration is not basically your average Eagle Scout. I mean, DeJoy comes from New York City. He took over his father's trucking company, which was sort of lagging, and then turned it into a thing. I don't know. LB's not here, but what do you call? I don't know. Trucking, New York City.
She might
Who
say.
do you have to deal with if you're dealing with trucking companies in New York City? There's a word for it. I can't think of it.
Lobsters.
I think it rhymes with lob, maybe. I don't know. And look at the guy. I mean, what 3-episode arc of The Sopranos did this motherfucker walk out of?
Exactly.
How more obvious can it be? He's there to fuck shit up, and I think people are pissed off about it. But
They aren't. I think people are sort of accepting it's just more fuckery, and they don't know what to do about it. Because what do? You just sort of.
It's really not. I don't understand how much more obvious that stuff has to get before people start to clue in that things are wrong. I mean, we have, like LB said last week, literally bags falling off of trucks is mob shit. And then morally, what this reminds me of is even the Bridgegate scandal in New Jersey. It just occurred to me, where Chris Christie, political points, closed off the lanes in Fort Lee, and ambulances couldn't get through. There was real significant problems with this stuff, and they just didn't care. They just don't care. They have no morals. Yeah,
I just don't get it when you do an executive search for this kind of person to hire them for the senior role, and you just find these few things out about him. That he associates with felons, that he's basically done campaign finance fraud. How does he get a job like this without getting screened out? As this is a huge job.
That's the whole point with these scumbags. He got screened. This is what Greg's saying. He got screened in.
He got screened in. This is a prerequisite for the job. Is you have to be a mobster to get a job. Okay. Now I get
Greg
it.
pointed it out. Greg pointed it out. How do you get in this late in the game?
Thanks, Greg.
Yeah.
This is all hands on deck. We need every scumbag mobster you got.
Yeah.
So it's like,
Just
no,
everybody.
we can't have the regular guy that's like kind of got the insurance company that's a little bit bent. No, we need a guy with a trucking company who will throw some bags off some stuff and don't care because he's going down too. And
because he's going down anyway. Maybe he's caught anyway.
DeJoy.
So this is going to make for an exciting and interesting election night. And this is a segue to Greg's great column today in Prevail about how to prepare yourself mentally, psychologically. I don't know if it's even possible to prepare yourself, but it's going to be a different kind of election. It's going to be a different kind of election night. It may not even be a night that we end the night with a winner. Greg, tell us about it.
Well, this is something that the Biden people themselves are concerned with and want people to know about, which is that the likelihood here is that we will not have a winner on election night because of the mail-in ballots, because it's going to take time for the mail-in ballots to get counted. And therefore, we're not going to know stuff. Wolf is going to have to contain his excitement about announcing Trump, for another couple of, for a day or so. And everybody in the country who is going to want closure and want resolution is going to have to right frickin' now realize that we're not going to get the closure that we want on election night. Probably what's going to happen is they're only going to show the live balloting like they usually do. And the live balloting, especially in the swing states, very well could show Trump winning those swing states. So we have to sit tight and understand that usually if mail-in ballots are 5%, whatever percentage they are, this year they're going to be 5 times that amount, enough to significantly impact, the result in some of these states that are close and hard fought. And we're just going to have to know that. And as soon as anything strange happens, the Trump people are going to run with it. They're going to say it was rigged. They're going to say it was a coup. They're going to say it's steal the this and that and the deep state. And there's going to be, horrible Russian ops. Peter Strzok was on AG's podcast talking about this earlier in the week in support of his book that came out. And his point is the lag time between the election and the result is going to be, he called it fertile ground for Russian mischief and disinformation.
Right, of course. And it makes sense. I mean, you're going to get, I think there was reports today as part of that, I think it's the scandal that's happening at the DHS or the whistleblower at DHS. He's also said that they, their big concern is that after the election night, after the results out, they will likely try and, amplify messages to these groups that they have on the ground that are white nationalists or white supremacists, and they will just try to trigger them because they've already spent years building up all this information in their brains that all they need to do is to trigger them in that period of time to do whatever it is they want, which could mean, could mean a civil war if the world, who knows.
It was their plan last time, guys. I mean, I have excellent sourcing and lots of research on this, that this was what Roger Stone and his crew were, as well as Russian intelligence, they were plotting. They had this, planted in the brains of a lot of folks. And I think the more centrist or liberal folks who aren't part of the disinformation sphere of the right wing, it's not to say every conservative voter, but definitely people in a certain, group of outlets that they were using Facebook and other social media to siphon you off into that universe where you're just perceiving a different world. They had people ready on a hair trigger for if anything looks bad about that election, that we're going to start shooting. They were riling up militia groups, every type they could get. And that, if you see anything wrong with that vote, it's going to be Obama's trying to stay in office and you need to take back the government, by which go shoot up the post office, go shoot your mayor or whatever. That's somebody, definitely Democrats, going to try and steal this. And Fox News started this again last night with Greg Gutfeld. Same. It's like these idiots only had one plan and don't believe in the FBI or anything. It's like, guys, You tried this 5 years ago. Now they're not very smart. They're just evil, and they're trying it again. And
Greg Gutfield, man, he's like, well, they want blood in the streets. They're going to try to go after guys like me. Here's a news flash, Greg Gutfield. I wouldn't know you if I was pissing on you. So calm down. Don't flatter yourself.
I feel like I should know who this person is.
No, you don't. You shouldn't, because you don't know who he is. Who cares?
Those are an article you posted from the Financial Times this morning, Eric, which actually said that there is real concern around QAnon developing into some sort of terror group. It's just terribly frightening, and so it seems ridiculous. But when you look at the makeup of all these terror groups, like Al Qaeda, and they sort of are born the same way. A lot of manipulation.
They've been radicalizing, and the pivot is already starting. And you've got people saying when they're being fed this information, so we need to know who's behind this, who's behind QAnon. They're being fed information. That there's this dire situation that we're civilization's barely holding on. This is not just a bunch of mobsters and enemies who are causing us to go mad. No, they're the last bulwark in all this. And so if it looks like Biden's going to win, maybe we'll have to do something really extreme. Now they're starting to be very specific. We may need to turn this violent, and it's interesting that this is exactly what DHS was told from Robert O'Brien, Trump's new and most treasony national security advisor. And that was a hell of a list that they had going. Somewhere between Mike Flynn and Bolton. To end up at the bottom of that pile is really quite a thing. But, it said in the DHS whistleblower report, there's two things we don't want you to look at. Nazis are going to shoot the place up, and the Russians. Okay, everything else is you can look at. Rogue Girl Scouts. You can look at junior varsity basketball teams, but no Russians or armed militias. And just watching the professionals try and deal with that, reading some of the quotes is like, why not? Well, because and they just came out and said because it'll make Trump look bad. And Chinese, why would? They're like, talk about China and Iran instead. Like, okay, let's talk about Belgium too. Those bastards.
And the Chinese invasion,
their waffles, their chocolate.
Get a word. The Chinese attempt to infiltrate the elections has so far been to hack the Biden campaign emails. It hasn't been, as many had suggested before, in support of Biden. It seems to be against Biden. So, in fact, in their own release of information, it seems that they've released information that indicates that both sides are working for Trump. And not the other way around, which sort of makes more sense in the geopolitical world.
You got to go to Peter Strzok on this. He's like, are they both up to something? Sure. Yeah. But who's the masters? Who's got the decades in this? Who's got the boots on the ground? Who's good at this stuff? Russia. Sorry, I mean Belgium. No, Liechtenstein. No, it's Russia.
Belgium is code for Russian.
Belgium is code for Russian. Red Dawn, Red Mirage, Blue Tide. Belgium.
Can you explain what these three things mean? Because they mean a lot in election night, and I'm sure people want to know.
The red mirage is the scenario that I just described, where it looks as if Trump has won on election night, and then we wake up and we realize the next day, 2 days later, that in fact, no, the votes haven't all been counted, and Biden did indeed prevail. And I decided to call it Red Dawn because we wake up to a red dawn, and also that means the Russians have invaded, because it's the same thing, really. It just seemed appropriate. But we're joking around about it, but this isn't like us putting our heads together and coming up with some sci-fi plot for a novel or something. This is something that the campaign is legitimately concerned with, that is not likely, but probable, that could happen. The best result is that Biden wins in a landslide, and Biden wins on election night, and we know it, and we can all I can't even imagine what that would be like, honestly.
It might still happen. There's a lot of places that get early counting of mailed-in ballots.
The more people that vote that we can get to the polls, the more likely it is that we can go to bed that night assured that Biden has won, because the mail-in ballots are going to be for him. We know this. So, people are saying, well, we can't change the minds of the cultists, And no, these people are never going to change their mind. I mean, if their grandparents are dying of COVID and they insist it's a hoax, and they're giving money to a campaign that's using that money to pay for their legal bills for felonies, and they're too stupid to see these things, they're never going to change. We don't need to convince the MAGA people. We need to convince people who don't vote or don't usually vote that, you know what, this is the one you got to kind of vote in this one. And the people that are, that both sides are the same, we need a third party. Biden isn't left enough with his policies. And it's like, listen, Trump is the ogre on the fucking bridge, okay, to the Green New Deal or whatever it is across the bridge. And until he's removed, nothing is going to happen. So if you want change, you got to vote for Biden. Otherwise, the Republic, if Trump wins, the country is over. Period.
It's really,
do
you want Russian leadership
election
in the United States, or do you want American leadership in the United States? That really is the choice. It's not really, there's not much to choose there between those two. You've got to choose Biden when you look at it that way, because you don't want Russia running America. They've done a pretty damn awful job in the last 4 years. So why give them another 4, especially with the news about the pandemic? I mean, it's just crazy. That Woodward interview drove me nuts. That he, on February the 7th, he has this quote that is just like the most damning quote in the entire world about Donald Trump. And Bob Woodward is fantastic, and I love the guy and all great journalism and whatever. But he sat on this quote for 4 months. I don't understand the rationale behind that. He works at a newspaper. He could just say, "Hey, I got this amazing quote from the president saying that people are going to die. Can we please release it? Can we please publish it?" He could have done that. I don't get the. Is it just
he
me?
said there's no legal. He said there was no legal contract, there was no NDA, and there was no embargo agreed for his interviews. And those interviews were consented to by the president. So I don't know. He can explain it. There's 200,000 dead bodies.
It's great to have it out, and I'm glad we have the information. It's fantastic to have the quote there, because we could finally say definitively, hey, this guy knew what he was doing when he decided to kill 200,000 people, but he still killed 200,000 people, and it's. I
mean, I wouldn't have done what Woodward did. We're trying to spread the word about things that we know as soon as we know it, but Woodward's not ultimately the guy to blame here. No. It's almost like blaming Pelosi and Schiff for what's happening. It's clearly Trump's fault and his minions. Woodward's going to have to live with that. He's going to have to live with it. I was also amused by this is worse than Watergate quote. It's like, oh, really? You think? Nobody died because you guys broke into the DNC, whatever, and bugged McGovern. Who cares about McGovern's headquarters anyway? I don't recall 189,000 people dying because of that. I don't know. Maybe I missed it.
I also don't know why we're all sort of not calling it a genocide and not calling it all these things that are, because it's really an incredible figure to think about it. There's been no other event in American history that's killed anything like this. And is there? I don't think.
Are we over the Civil War? I don't think we're not there yet. I think the Civil War is, what is it, Eric? 500,000? I want to say
that sounds
it's more.
In there.
It's more, but the fact that we're thinking, oh, we got to get up to the Civil War levels is probably not good.
It's 200,000 people is a genocide. It's like a remarkably large number of people to have one person allowing that to have happened because of his, what would you call it?
With his
intentional mismanagement of the thing.
Not even allowing it to, making it worse. I mean, he's going to these events, these super spreader events, promoting the sort of idea that masks are bad and this and that and the other, touching all these people. I mean, for a while, everybody that Trump came in contact with was getting COVID. So it seemed like he had it and was asymptomatic and was just giving it to everybody. I mean, I don't know if that's true, but it certainly seemed that way. That seems to have tapered off. It's like, how much more bad shit can this guy do? I don't understand.
No one in his family got it either, which is just weird. Anyhow, let's get back to the blue tide and all of that, because I don't think we've explained blue tide yet. I don't know if we have.
Blue tide is next morning, man. We come in, we wake up, or a day later, 2 days later, and we realize, hey, what do you know? Biden won Texas. That's it.
Now there are some states where you can your ballots that you send in early can be pre-counted before the day, and in those states you are going to get a blue tide. Now, they're not
Right.
all the states; they all have different rules, but they're going to get us, a huge number right off the top. Where you're going to say Biden's got, a million whatever voters in this district, and he's clearly going to walk away with the thing. So there is some hope to combat your red dawn or the red mirage, if it should emerge. Eric, I just want to talk some more, if we could, about the DHS thing. Because
Okay.
I'm sure you know a lot about it. I haven't asked you.
It's pretty bad.
But did she? So Kristen, what's her name? What was her name? The former.
Oh, Christian Nielsen,
Yeah.
who doesn't, Christian Nielsen
Sorry,
with like J's
back
and
here.
SENs and whatnot, who doesn't know whether the people in Norway are white. This is one of my favorite.
So,
I'm not
she
sure.
lied under
people in
oath.
Norway.
She lied under oath
Oh,
about the number of
yeah.
terrorists
No,
that there were in coming across the border from Mexico.
No, they were leaning on their intelligence analysts to lie about where the KST's known and suspected terrorists are entering through. So DHS, one of the things they do is, under the giant bureaucratic umbrella, probably too large, I think a lot of people would say, that includes the border patrol and immigrations and custom and whatnot. They know when where people come in and out, and if they identify you either at the time you come in or when you come in illegally and they catch you or wherever, it's their job to figure out, all right, are you a bad guy? Were you on a list before? Did you get in here? How'd you get in? Where'd you get in? So they keep all that information. And because they wanted this big mob construction boondoggle horse shit, money laundering opportunity, every just sort of like felony smorgasbord of the wall, right? They had to have some justification, though. I wonder why, because apparently their voters don't care, and they should be just like, we're building a wall because we're building a wall. Go to hell. We're not even coming to Congress. That's
Now we don't want to wall because we want to be able to go to Mexico, and Mexico won't even let us go there.
Oh,
we
the
have a
irony.
That's right.
Oh,
We're
the
locked
irony.
out. Good luck getting a senior in Tijuana's like, hey, no, I'm fine. No, sorry, brother. No, so the intelligence that the DHS INA, which is their intelligence analysis, that's their one of the 17 intelligence agencies. They're like, yeah, that was false testimony, and
so that's a crime. She should be getting charged with, presumably. I don't know.
18 U. I mean, intentional false statements are still 18 U.S. Code or subsection 18 U.S. Code subsection 1001. You can't lie to the feds, whether it's congressional testimony or FBI or whatever, I believe. This is not misunderstandings. This is intentional false statements. So that was the concern there. But the pattern is the most distressing, is that they went directly to their intelligence agency that supports DHS. And remember, DHS is one of the two agencies. I think it was like FBI and DHS. They can talk, about the homeland, about U.S. territory, because CIA does not cover U.S. territory. NSA does not cover U.S. territory. There's no intelligence assessments there. So you got FBI for certain threats and DHS. Everything else is looking out at potential threats elsewhere. So one of those agencies, the Trump people have leaned on to lie to not just the higher ups or the congressional consumers of their intelligence products, but every downstream law enforcement and security organization, agency that there is. So every city, county, every other part of the United States that relies on DHS for threat assessment. Even if they don't hear from them every day, they expect, if they do hear something, that it's important and it's accurate and it's correct. That tore all of that up. And they were incredibly transparent. These guys who were there illegally, Chad Wolf and Ken Cuccinelli, are illegally in their jobs. They should not be making those decisions anyhow. And on top of that, they're very transparent. This is for Trump. This is to keep Trump in. This is so we can build the wall. This is so we can cover for the Russian Federation. I mean, it's.
They literally
I don't even
seem
know
to be
where
ginning
it
up
is
a
on the
war
crime.
here. I mean, they're basically saying that the white supremacist groups are not a threat, and that Antifa is a threat. That's according to this.
Yes, it's intentionally so that we don't look the other way on people that are gonna commit murder on U.S. soil and interfere with our democracy. I mean, it can't get more treasonous than this.
It really is unbelievable.
And in some ways more treasonous than the June 9th meeting at Trump Tower. We got dirt on Hillary Clinton. Oh, okay. I mean, it wouldn't go very far if it were tried, I don't think, but there's a certain plausible deniability with roundly stupid people that maybe they didn't get what they were doing.
2020 is much worse than 2016. I mean, in 2016, we did not have the mailboxes and the post office destroyed and ballots being thrown out the sides of rental vehicles and some mobster in charge of these organizations. We did not have any of this DHS disaster. We didn't have any of the intelligence.
We had
we
had Jay Johnson. We had Obama in the White House. Yeah. We had Jay Johnson. And there's a lot of criticism about could these guys have done more? But at the end of the day, they were the ones pushing on Mitch McConnell to go, we need to work on this. And he's like, no, we don't. Yeah. But at the end of the day, they got to prepare the National Guard, which they did. We know that from David Scheimer's book on this program. Mm-hmm. We know that Obama had the National Guard ready to go, and the National Guard would depend on DHS. And we had Jay Johnson at DHS, not traitors, doing good work, not telling their intelligence analysts to lie. In case the Roger Stone, we're going to turn America into a bloodbath scenario, came out. So this time, though, we got Louis DeJoy, we got, Chad Wolf, the lobbyist from F Street, who's never done
acting
anything.
Secretary Chad Wolf, please.
Acting.
Always call him acting Secretary Chad Wolf. Like, it has to be the whole thing. This is personal
acting Secretary Chad Wolf.
Acting Secretary
John Oliver said Chad Wolf, who looks the most like anybody you'd expect to be named Chad Wolf.
So true. So that's not the rosiest of pictures. Let's talk about something that is very different, and that's Saudi Arabia's new, don't say fun topic.
Enough with treason. Let's go to guys that kill people with surgical tools. Next up.
But
Sports on the hour.
It's 9/11, and we should, it's fascinating that on this day they've decided to let, I guess they've allowed testimony to go ahead. Is that true?
Oh, that was huge.
This is
they're going to allow Bandar outside to the artist formerly known as Bandar Bush, a former ambassador, to testify, as well as a number of current and past Saudi officials. So there's a lot left to learn about 9/11. And by the way, to throw this in with some other stuff going on, I'm reading the Peter Strzok book, Compromised, Counterintelligence and the Threat of Donald J. Trump. It is astonishing. It's an amazing book. And it's like chapter 1, deep cover Russian spies. Chapter 2, 9/11. Like,
Well,
dude.
How does the one get to the other? That's so weird.
Huh.
It's almost
and he
like
also covered. The other thing he did, so he investigated the OPCO stories, the deep cover multi-decade Russian spies.
Right.
He investigated 9/11 and Snowden.
Yeah,
where'd Snowden end up again?
I have no
Toronto.
Russia. I think is that where he landed up? I think
Oslo,
Russia, Belgium. Actually.
Why did Felix Sater know where Osama bin Laden was?
Because my investigation, my conversations with Felix indicated that he would have gotten that from the Russians. That's where he got the information from.
Why would there? What? But Putin was the first world leader to call Bush on 9/11, almost like he knew that something might happen. And then why didn't Putin just tell them, Bush, his buddy, where bin Laden was if the Russians knew? Why?
I'll ask you one other thing while we're asking good questions. Why did this happen 3 days after the 9/11? Why all these nice people meeting George W. Bush, the Saudi ambassador, to discuss evacuating Saudis and terrorist renditions? And there they are sipping cocktails on the balcony of the White House. 2 days after? Really? 2 days? And so this is what he had to do on September the 13th? That's a very unusual meeting. It strikes me as being... that wouldn't be the first country I'd invite over to say, hey, help us out with what's going on.
You'd think you'd have the UK and Canada and Australia over there.
Yeah, you'd think that. There's Dick Cheney doing Dick Cheney stuff in there. And it's a very, certainly
No, he hasn't shot anyone in the face yet. That's unfair.
So there you go. So
that was for Greg. I was going to try and get Greg to break up.
So, yeah, you almost did. I think you did. So we've got... 9/11 to figure out in the future, but there are going to be now lawsuits against the Saudi officials, which is going to cost the Saudi government about $750 billion, or at least that's what they're threatening to pull out of the American economy. But because it's going to be that much, the lawsuits could be the damages could be so high that before Obama left office and he was threatening to allow the courts to start to do this, they had threatened to pull out $750 billion from the economy, which they still, I suppose, could do. But because of our president currently, they didn't have to, as he happily pointed out about the journalist that died. I can't believe the name. Khashoggi.
Jamal Khashoggi.
And because he spent 750, and because he sold so much weapons to them, he was able to save a lot of this from going down. The sale of the $750 billion of assets and treasury assets. Yes, no, maybe I'm confounding two stories.
Oh, no, I mean, no, but I'm just thinking about the Saudis threatening us that way. I just like to remind maybe the Saudi, embassies watching this show. You and I both know that at each one of your oil rigs is a guy from Texas and American technology. Have a good night. Don't shake our country down, you sons of bitches.
But they are.
Because you can't tap your own oil. You're going to get a bucket. Have fun.
You better be careful, Eric. They might send somebody to your house, which means they'll have to send like a minivan because they always send 11 people wherever they go. Because Saudi hitmen are that effective. It's like they're really...
They are very effective.
Yeah,
they are
scary.
But, I don't think they're any match for Eric. So this story drives me nuts as well because there he is. Khashoggi is probably the biggest story tragedy that's happened to journalism in a long time, and certainly one of the biggest tragedies that happened to someone who worked for an American newspaper abroad. And this organized hit job happens on Turkish soil, and it's clearly the Saudis. And the president's reaction is, "I saved his ass," and it's not about the journalist; it's about MBS. I mean, it's just sad.
Well, even at the time, he was tweeting support of MBS. Yeah. By the way, I mean, I wrote something about this 2 years ago before all the facts were sort of in, and the intelligence at that time seemed to suggest that the Saudis were behind it. And Trump who must have known, was saying, no, I support MBS. I believe MBS, And then the CIA came out with their assessment, I don't know, a week or two after that, saying, no, it was actually the Saudis did this. And Trump never, he never did anything. He was always on board. And we can't mention MBS without mentioning Jared Kushner,
right,
who was basically the de facto ambassador to Saudi Arabia. Remember, Saudi Arabia was the first state visit when Trump became president. Remember, they went there and there was that weird glowing orb that they had the hand over, and they did the sword dance and all that kind of weird stuff. And Jared was there. MBS was pumping him for information. And the Intercept, I mean, consider the source, but the Intercept did report that Kushner gave MBS, or at least acknowledged that certain of the people in the royal family were disloyal to him. And after Kushner left, there was a purge of people in the royal family. Yeah. So Kushner has so much blood on his hands that it makes your head spin. It's really, I can't
have so much blood.
It's a Kushner in particular, though. I mean, I don't get it. I mean, even before the Blue State genocide that he's also a part of, I mean, he's responsible for a lot of deaths at this point.
And he's running around the Middle East saying, "Hey, I've achieved this great Middle East peace plan," which is just an abomination. But it seems to be it is sort of coming out in a fashion that's going to work, I guess. But it's just horrific to the Palestinian people.
It's horrific to the Israeli people. I mean, think of the everything that's gone on there. All of a sudden, since 1948, right? Now, all of a sudden, just as the Russian asset in the White House is getting popped, and it's been a hell of a day for indictments and other Justice Department stuff. Bill Barr notwithstanding, although he got he got his ass handed to him today at the Flynn case. And
Oh, yeah,
one
we're gonna
of
talk about that
Durham's
too.
prosecutors list. Oh, it's just delicious. So Judge Gleason is the amicus for Judge Sullivan in Flynn's case. Is like, Bill Barr is insane and Flynn is super guilty, and maybe hit him with some perjury stuff too. I'm out. This is all, we're done.
And there's a prosecutor that dropped out of the Durham
in Connecticut, I
investigation.
think, right? Yeah.
That's right. That's right. One of Durham's longtime colleagues, and Durham, who after, with all the Q ultra right wing stuff, Durham's going to get these deep state guys. Well, when, the longtime mob prosecutor, John the Bull Durham, finally meets John Brennan at, a former CIA director, they talked for 8 hours. And my understanding of the exchange of information that made it out from one of Brennan's old deputies on Twitter was that, they talked for 8 hours, and Durham told Brennan, "You are neither subject nor target of the investigation," which just makes him a witness. So, so what happened? And anything else you want to tell us about?
That's interesting. That's interesting.
Where did the origins of the Russia investigation, the CIA, the Russia investigation, like there's one, the whole the pretense is hilarious. And the only thing Brennan said publicly was, "I told Durham, I was really sorry about having to deal with Barr." And I was like, sorry, conspirators, sorry guys. So now Durham's got a prosecutor gone. So the wheels are coming off the treason bus here for all the Trump people. And then just as that happens, Bibi Netanyahu is now like, "Oh, guess who we're at peace with? We're at peace with the Emirates and Bahrain, and we love everyone." It's like, man, all you money launderers stick together. It's just,
that's really
who do they bring in? Jared Kushner. How did he achieve Middle East peace? Money laundering, his only talent.
Yeah, they bought the peace, and they continue to buy the peace, and they've sold out Israeli democracy, they've sold out American democracy, and they've sold out an alliance with America that, I think is, at the end of the day, more important than your alliance with China or Russia. But, that's up to, that's their state's decision. But none of that points to a good future for democracy in the Middle East or any human rights in the Middle East. We are going backwards in time into a dark, dark place where money just rules the roost over there, and nothing else matters. And people are going to die, and people are going to disappear, and all the same kinds of crime that used to be there are just going to return in bigger amounts, and then we'll end up with war again, because it's really hard to keep the peace if you're not going to be democratic. It's just really hard to do.
Yeah, I think it's why we need, none of us have the government we deserve right now, for the most part. And we really need to, to fight for this republic, because I think if there's anything we've learned in the last few years, I don't mean this is from a sense of American chauvinism, as I often say. I don't think America is the best country. I do think it's an indispensable nation, for a few reasons. But for no other reason, we have a lot of democratic ideals, and we're extremely powerful, and the world needs, it's a very Russian talking point. You don't want the United States playing world policeman. Well, why the hell not? If we have a system of rule of law that supports human rights, we're not going to override your sovereign government. In fact, if we wanted to do that, we would have done it when the Soviets wanted to drive their tanks all the way to Portugal in the 40s. We could have beaten basically every other world power. America could have taken the world over between 1945 and 55. I mean, the whole planet. We get this whole place. We could just call everywhere else the other Texas, the other Texas.
But it is the only country in the world.
Afro Texas and Asia Texas, and just be everything else would just be Texas.
I'm going to go
Texasia.
Texasia. I like it.
Well, it is the only country in the world that is really democratic. And I will say that there's lots of other countries that pretend to be democratic, but they also have their old school hierarchies, the sort of the upper class, the nobility, call it whatever, the monarchies. They all still have that in place. Aristocracy. America chose not to go that route. America chose to be completely equal, completely free, and that makes it a real threat to all these other countries in the world that have all these other systems. And so that has set up where we're at today, where we've got this conflict between countries that have this this nobility class, and the one country in the world that really doesn't, which is America.
And do you know when Russia really started looking at the United States as a threat to its system? Middle of the 19th century.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, they wanted...
Uh-oh. It froze you right out of the picture, Eric. You must have said something annoying to them.
I think the Russians are pissed at Eric.
They must be. Oops, I almost fell off my chair. All right. This is almost time to wrap up the show, I think. Oh, there he's back. He's back.
They've had time to work on me. But, I mean, there were a couple countries that really started paying attention to the United States in the 1850s and 60s. Russia and the new world power of Prussia, that by the very late 19th century becomes this new nation of Germany, that becomes by alliances Europe's strongest nation, but with not much backstory as a single nation. They were paying close attention to the United States. The Russians were paying attention because they wanted to know how we were going to resolve our issues with slavery, because they had the system of serfdom, and they, like, whatever they set up over there, like, they're knuckleheads, and we are knuckleheads. We're immature. We don't look at history enough. Like, all the images of the ugly American are pretty true. And we also come up with some new ideas that we implement badly and then better.
And we are free. I mean, there's just this freedom thing that is so important. And people sort of, that is the one thing that America has that's different from the rest of the world, is ultimate freedom, or supposedly have as ultimate freedom, or at least the aspiration towards ultimate freedom. It doesn't exist anywhere else in the world. And that's a big deal. It's also a giant threat, but it's a huge thing.
Yeah. And there's a really cool story in the Peter Strzok book about this, where they are collecting what appears to be, physical part of a FISA warrant. They're getting into a bank box for a deep cover Russian spy in Boston. And they're talking about how they need to keep exactly to that warrant. They can't bump into anything else in the bank, because even when they're going to protect national security, they want to protect every American's civil rights. And this is so the antithesis of the Snowden, Greenwald, WikiLeaks, Russian horseshit.
I mean, America would never go and attack another country the way we've been attacked. We would never be sending coronaviruses and all these other plagues or whatever it is they want to send us. It would never happen under an American system, I don't think. I mean, we would send military weapons and would have a war. That's we've done, but we're
loud and dumb, and we'd get caught.
Yeah. We get caught. That's the thing. It's a free system. Yeah, people would tell.
We have stupid ideas. I mean, like, we did have some Nazi eugenics in the 1920s, and we're loud about things. So we're like the eldest child in the family always gets caught. I don't know if any of you are the eldest. I was the eldest, and I'm just loud and dumb. So I did get in the intelligence world. Maybe it was a response to that. I don't know. I was like,
probably you're just trying to search your brilliance.
But America is just loud and just
confident,
weirdly sincere about things. What's that?
There's 100% of in all the surveys I've seen about what makes America uniquely different from the rest of the world is its confidence. I think it's true. I think it's true. I think it comes from a lot of things, but I think that confidence is uniquely American, and it's very attractive, and it's why these powers around the world view America as such a threat, because it is so attractive. Everyone wants to live in America. Everyone wants to live under freedom. Everyone wants to have equal opportunity to everybody else, and that's a rare thing in the world. So it's some people say that the Jungle Book. I don't know if you're big fans of the Jungle Book. I've read it. That's actually an allegory for all of this. That Mowgli is the free democracy, and especially the latest Disney adaptation.
Oh, that's interesting.
It's worth looking at that book through that sort of mindset, because it is a threat. This is where America is a magical country where anything is possible. And no one wants that. No one wants that to go out of control to the point where it takes over everything else. From their perspective, they want to stay in power. They want to stay in control of the world.
Well, from very early on, and if you think the Russian memory is very long, the Russians had a very tight relationship with France, to the point that their royal court spoke French for centuries. France helped our revolution out, and then traipsed our revolutionary heroes, Tom Paine, Ben Franklin, Thomas Jefferson. Dudes were rock stars in Paris. They were at every party. They got laid. All their stuff, their stuff got published. They were rock stars in Paris. And they went, the French had a king. And they're like, that was a thumb in the eye to their global rivals, the English. Like, ha! It was like a really great op. They turned the Americans free and gave them some military help, and suckers, you lost North America, you idiots. And then, somewhere 23 years after that, they had seeded all of our ideas out into the world, which are based on some of their ideas of, Voltaire and Descartes and whatnot. But they seeded them back into French society. And then it got really hot one summer in 1789. And they did they cracked down on a protest. And the people of France tore the place apart. The Russians were watching that, right?
Yeah.
The Prussians were watching that. And they're like, wait a minute, what happens in America with freedom? People might get an idea about. So 70 years after that, they're watching the Civil War going, wait a minute, what are they going to do with making people work for cheap? Because we do that too. So let's watch that. And then they start their active measures. Then you get the 20th century. Now it's on, man. And America's a global power after World War I, and definitely after World War II. You're right, Zev. The world is watching us. And that's what the wonderful addition to thoughts that I hadn't had yet of, why this is an important place. And this place has to be a democracy. It's why it's worth fighting for. And it's not about the American people or the land or anything. It's the ideas are just so freaking good that they threaten scumbags. Our ideas of democracy and freedom and right threaten despots across the globe.
And where are our allies? Where are our allies? I don't see them coming to America's defense yet. I have not seen, maybe the Australians through intelligence, we've seen some of that. But I don't know if we've seen a united front by our allies. Where is NATO defending America's honor in the face of Russia's blatant attack on America? I haven't seen it. They're still, wandering around negotiating. It wasn't you get to defend America only if you like the president. It's you get to defend America because that's what we stand for. And why aren't we hearing more from these countries?
They're captured too.
Sorry?
They're captured too. A lot of them.
Some of them, I don't know.
Not France.
Germany could say what it
Austria,
Canada. Anybody could say.
Germany's
they all
a
have
tough
reasons
example.
to not do it, but they should be doing it.
Britain's got problems. We had some dude in Norway just. What's that?
Britain's worse than we
are
in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
Look,
they don't have
report.
Things are bad,
Yeah.
but still, there could be America's going through probably the worst of it, and America's the most vulnerable because of our system. Their system is going to be the same afterwards.
But when they flip certain countries, like when they, Iceland's only 330,000 people, so they got a bunch of. I mean, it's really gross. They've got they've got a bunch of their politicians on child abuse and child abuse media stuff. You only have to get a few dozen guys in that situation, and you own yourself a country with a seat at the UN, right? Mm-hmm. So now, go Norway, Denmark. How much have they exploited Estonia and Latvia? And Estonians and Latvians generally hate the Russians because they remember what they did to their country for most of the 20th century.
The world doesn't hate America. They don't like is Donald Trump. And why is it they're not defending America? And why are we not seeing more of that, especially coming into this next election? Why aren't we seeing more of a I don't want them interfering because that would be wrong, of course. But why aren't we seeing a much stronger force that, if Russia better watch out, that if this continues, this is just as bad what they're doing, much worse what they're doing now in 2020 and 2016, certainly much worse than what happened with Skripal or any of these other terrible things, or with the other guy who was poisoned and is now being treated in Berlin. Those things are serious. What's happening to America is deadly serious. And we're not hearing enough from these other countries. Just a little rant.
I think in a lot of cases they're it's their governments we're not hearing from, because they've got some similar problems. Austria's had been turning in guys from their military for being spies for Russia. I think France had somebody very high up in the intelligence community that they just busted. I mean,
but
Russians,
we
they've
were
been
there
at this a while.
for Nazi Germany. We stood by them. We went and fought for them. Why are they here for helping us eradicate this foreign threat that's arrived here? I mean, those are just true facts. We went and killed a lot of people.
Well, we have done the show on Deutsche Bank, right?
Yeah, we have done the show on Deutsche Bank, so we know why. Hey, I think we got to wrap because we'll keep talking.
We got some problems.
Did we miss anything?
Can I say one quick thing before we wrap?
Yes.
We got time. I know Eric's going to go. Just one thing, because I want to end on a high note.
Yes.
The best thing about this country is that everybody that comes to the country, or everybody who lives here, with the exception of Native Americans, comes from somewhere else and came here under some sort of duress, or because they were basically forced out of their own countries or left because the situation was better here. So basically they were losing in the other countries. They were the weaker people. They were the least economically advantaged. They had less religious freedom. They had less power. They had less opportunity. They had less all of these things. So it's essentially, if we may appropriate a Trump term, it's a nation of losers in their home countries, right? In their native countries, who come to America for new opportunities to win. And this collection of diverse people from all over the place somehow comes together under the banner and the ideals of democracy that Eric eloquently talked about, and becomes the ultimate winners, right? That's what we are. And what fuels it is the ideals. And, we can never forget about that. Trump and these guys want to destroy the ideals, and they can't. The ideals are not going to die. Like, I've been saying this for 3 years. If the Republic falls, it's not going to be because of that fucking guy.
No,
that's all I gotta say.
Will live on, but the Republic should not fall for that guy.
No,
I mean, it really shouldn't.
It will not.
That's a great note to end it on tonight. Thanks for your time, gentlemen. And Lincoln's Bible was on chat. I saw her earlier on. So I hope she's resting and happy and enjoying still a drink on a Friday night.
Good.
And we have 250,000 downloads of the podcast, which is great. So we want to thank our audience for doing that. It's amazing that you guys have come forward. And 250,000, that's a big number. It's 250,000. I was blown away by that. So thank you very much for your support of Narrative, and we will be back on Tuesday with a really big show, because Greg Smith is here, and he is Eric Prince's former associate. He knows a thing or two about Eric Prince
Group. Yeah, and he's got a major documentary about the mercenary business that's going to be very uncomfortable for Mr. Eric Prince on Monday in Australia, and he's going to be on Narrative on Tuesday.
Just the way things go.
Quite a schedule.
Nice. That's going to be nice. I'm looking forward to that. That's going to be a big interview. Join us then. Thanks very much, and have a great weekend, everybody.
Support Narrative's independent journalism at patreon.com/narrative. And check out our podcast wherever you get your podcasts. And don't forget to subscribe and download.